This is the second part of the major editing errors presentation. This will cover agreement errors and apostrophe errors. Subject-verb agreement errors are one of the types of agreement errors we're going to cover. In a sentence, the subject and verb must agree in number. That's an always. And this sometimes becomes confusing because we consider plural subjects often end with an S, and so we think everything that's plural will end in an S. However, a plural verb often does not end with an S. Only occasionally does that happen. And what I mean by that, if we look and think about singular subjects, if we have singular subjects like car, dog, girl, ribbon, all those, they don't have S's attached to them, but when we want to make them plural, when there's more than one, they do. Cars, dogs, girls, ribbons. However, when we try to look at the singular or plural verbs, they're going to be sort of the opposite. Sometimes. The dog barks. That's a complete and proper agreement, or a complete and proper sentence that's in agreement. Barks is a singular verb because it matches that singular subject, dog. Now, if we wanted to talk about dogs, we would say the dogs bark, okay, because dogs is plural. However, bark is a plural verb, even though the S is not there. So that's where we run into trouble. So we have to be mindful of that. We always want to be sure that we're using the correct subject and the correct verb, that they match and agree in number. We can look at this and sort of think about singular and plural by just dividing it up if we're going to do a conjugation. And this is what, you may have done this in school. Probably, I think I did it in middle school when I was younger, where we conjugated verbs. If you've taken a foreign language class, I'm sure you've conjugated verbs to see how the verb pairs up with each pronoun, singular pronouns and plural pronouns. So it would be like this: I bark, you bark, he, she, or it barks. He barks, she barks, it barks. So in that case, they take on that singular form. It's a singular form, but it has that plural. It has the verb that looks like it would be plural because it has the S. Of course, it's not. The plural form: we bark, you bark, they bark. And often if you put your sentences like this, if you try to conjugate your verb, if you're not sure how it's going to work out, if you conjugate it out, you may be able to figure out what is the appropriate pairing of which makes sure you have the correct verb with the correct form of the singular or plural subject. We run into problems, I have found, when we use the verb to be. Forms of be become very confusing for some speakers and writers when it comes to subject-verb agreement. So I want to go over the singular and plural forms of be so you understand. It's I am, you are, he is, she is, it is. For the plural, we are, you are, they are. Now notice in none of those situations when we have you are, it's never you is, okay? And it's never he are. This is an always formula. This is the present tense form of the be verb, okay? You never have they is. It's always going to be they are. Never going to be we is. It's always we are, all right? And you even see young children, infants and toddlers who are just learning to speak. They sometimes have trouble with the be verb as well. You know, they'll say, I is tired, you know? So it's a common thing. You just have to learn that be is an irregular verb, and you need to learn the way that it's used in proper communication. Past tense forms of be also create problems. We have I was, you were, not you was, but you were. He was, she was, it was. So you never see someone say she were. That's not correct. For the plural form, it's we were, you were, and they were. And if you know these forms, if you memorize them, then you're less likely to make a mistake with them. And I know sometimes with our conversation, we sometimes use the incorrect speech, but we want to move away from that in professional environments and in collegiate arenas and just with writing in general. Have is another verb that can create problems. So here it is conjugated out. I have, you have, he has, she has, it has. The plural form of that, we have, you have, they have. Okay, it's never he have, it's never they has, or you has. So just remember that. Do is another one of those complicated verbs. I do, you do, he does, she does, it does. And I think that confuses people because sometimes you'll hear people say he do or she do. That's not correct. It needs to be does. Okay? We do, you do, and they do are the plural forms. So let's try these in action and see how they work. Okay? We have 3 sentences. Joan be at the library all day. Doesn't sound right. Mark have $20. Doesn't sound right either. Sharon do the laundry every Thursday. These are all incorrect forms. So let's see what we need to do. Joan be at the library all day? No. Joan is at the library all day. Mark have $20? No. Needs to be Mark has $20. Okay? Because Mark would be the same as saying he. He has. Joan would be the same as saying she. She is. So if you put it against those pronouns, you'll understand. Sharon do the laundry every Thursday? Sharon doesn't do. Sharon do? No. Sharon does the laundry every Thursday. Sometimes we run into trouble with our agreement because we tend to separate the subject and the verb in our sentence, and that's fine because we want to write more complex sentences, and sometimes in doing that, the subject and verb aren't going to be side by side like they were in those examples I showed you before. Words within a prepositional phrase, for example, prepositions may come in between your subject and verb, but anything inside the prepositional phrase cannot be the subject of your sentence. And here's an example. A volunteer in the Peace Corps serves 2 years. Now, in this sentence, even though corps comes closest to serves, it's not the thing, that's not the verb, that's not the subject that the verb is working with, because in the Peace Corps is a prepositional phrase. So that takes that out entirely. You can't consider any of that. You look at volunteer, and a volunteer serves 2 years. And if it helps you, anytime you see prepositional phrase, and if you don't know what prepositional phrases are, look that up in your textbook or look it up online. But anytime you have prepositional phrases, if you want to pull those out to help you try to find the subject and verb and how they agree, do that, okay? Because you see the sentence still makes sense. A volunteer serves 2 years. And the Peace Corps just gives more information. Similar to this, don't let dependent clauses distract you from writing a correct sentence. The coins that I found last week seem valuable. Now, seem is our verb, and the closest noun is week, but that's not going to be our subject in that sentence. It's going to be coins, because that I found last week, that's a dependent clause. That is a dependent word, just like because, and that's what I talked about in the last presentation. We talked about dependent words. So that I found last week, that could be removed entirely. Nothing in there could be our subject. So the coins seem valuable. The coins that I found last week seem valuable. Coins and seem have to work together. Another problem with subject-verb agreements that we run into is if we have a compound subject. When you have 2 or more subjects, be sure that your verb agrees. Subjects joined by and require a plural verb because that's multiple people doing one thing. Jane and Paul have the car. You know, that's just like saying they. They have the car. Both of them have possession of the car at this time. All right? However, if a subject's joined by or nor, the verb agrees with the subject closer to it because or implies something different than and. And implies that things are going together. Those two things, Jane and Paul, are combined. They're one unit. Okay? Or that Jane and Paul are doing the same thing. Or and nor, you use those words when it's one or the other. Okay? So in those cases, you need to use the verb. The verb needs to agree with whatever subject came closest to it. Either Jane or Paul has the car. Because I don't know if Jane has the car or Paul has the car. But because of the way the sentence is structured, Paul is the nearest person, the nearest thing, the nearest subject to the verb. So Paul is what would control the way the verb reacts if the verb's going to be subject singular or plural. Paul is singular, so the verb needs to be singular. Neither you nor Bill has a license. Now, in this case, Bill is our nearest subject to the verb, so that's what controls the verb. So Bill has a license. It has to agree with that. Now, if I had told the reverse of that, if I said neither Bill nor you would agree with have. Remember in our example earlier when we conjugated, it's you have, not you has. So if I switched it around and said neither Bill nor you have a license, then have would be used in that case if the word you were closer to the verb. Indefinite pronouns can also cause us problems when we're trying to agree with subject and verb, and that's because our indefinite pronouns, they're going to replace general nouns, and most of them are singular, but some can be plural, and you just have to learn the rules to that. You just have to learn which are singular and which are plural, and most of the plural ones can sometimes be singular, so it's kind of confusing. You have to just go with the context of the sentence and work from there. But a list of singular indefinite pronouns: another, anybody, anyone, anything, each of or either of, everybody, everyone, everything, much, neither of, nobody, no one, nothing, one of, somebody, someone, something. These are all our singular indefinite pronouns. And if they're singular, then our verb has to be singular. So just remember that when you're using them. Indefinite pronouns that can be singular or plural are all, any, none, or some. So these may take a singular verb, they may take a plural verb. It all depends on the context of the sentence, and sometimes it's up to you as the writer. Okay, so you may have a little more leeway with these four. The other ones are more strictly bound to being singular and requiring a singular verb. Moving on to the other type of agreement, we have pronoun-antecedent agreement. And this becomes a problem as well when we write. Pronouns have to agree in both gender and number with its antecedent. Now, the antecedent, if we don't know what that is, that's the word, and the word could be a noun or another pronoun that a pronoun modifies. Okay? So an example would be this: Greg likes his new shirt. In this sentence, our pronoun is his. The pronoun is his, and it modifies Greg, which is our antecedent. You see how they're connected? Greg likes his new shirt. We wouldn't say Greg likes her new shirt because Greg is a boy's name. Okay? We wouldn't say Greg likes your new shirt unless we're talking about someone else's shirt. If the shirt belongs to Greg, then that's the correct pronoun would be his. So we don't want to confuse our pronouns and antecedents. We don't want to get them out of order. And it seems easy here because we know Greg is male and his is a male pronoun. So and it's a singular pronoun because Greg is one person. But indefinite pronouns, just like we spoke about just a few moments ago, indefinite pronouns can cause problems. Okay? Look at this sentence and see if you know what goes here. Everyone should bring blank raincoat. Think about this one. A person left blank pencil behind. And what we're trying to do is what pronoun would go there? What pronoun matches with, in the first sentence, everyone? What pronoun would match person? A person left blank pencil behind. Put everything in blank place. People enjoy blank creature comforts. All right, so what everything in that the third sentence, everything, the pronoun for that would be what? People enjoy blank. What would be a pronoun for people? All right. The first sentence, everyone should bring his or her raincoat. It wouldn't be there because everyone, remember, is a singular word. It's a singular indefinite pronoun. His or her would be the mate to that, would be the match for it. You wouldn't say there. There implies more than one person. There is many. All right? His or her means either one or the other because we don't know if it's male or female that we're speaking to. Everyone should be all inclusive. Now, if I were talking to a group and it was a group of boarding school girls, then I could say everyone should bring her raincoat. The next one, a person left his or her pencil behind because we're not sure whose pencil it belongs to, if that person's male or female. Again, if it's an all-boys school and I'm saying a person left his pencil behind, that would be okay. But if we're unsure, we don't want to appear sexist in our language, so we need to always use his or her. Put everything in blank place. Put everything in its place. Okay? Everything is singular, so it needs a singular pronoun, which would be its. People enjoy blank creature comforts. Now, people is plural, so it will need a plural pronoun, and a plural pronoun would be their. People enjoyed their creature comforts. And that's how you would solve these. Now, we often have a his or her dilemma, and especially when we're writing papers, it gets kind of tedious when we keep doing that over and over again. We don't want to appear sexist in our language, so we need to include his or her. We don't want to say all his or it's all her. We want to give, acknowledge both genders. But it can become cumbersome to use his or her over and over again in a paper, especially when you're using it sentence after sentence after sentence. Once or twice is okay, but once we use it repeatedly, it sort of ties down the language. It bogs it down a bit. A solution for that, try making your antecedent plural. And when you do, if it's possible, sometimes it's not, but if it is possible, that way you avoid the repetitive use of his or her, because once you've made the antecedent plural, then you can have the pronoun be plural as well. So I could say, where I said earlier, everyone should bring his or her raincoat. If I wanted to avoid that his or her dilemma, I could just say people should bring their raincoats. But notice that I had to make raincoats plural because everyone's not traveling with the exact same or with the same raincoat. Everyone has their own. Everyone has his or her own, rather. And you notice that when we speak, we sometimes don't even think about it. It's just something we do absently. We say everyone and their, and we pair those together in language. It's very common. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure a lot of people are guilty of that. When we write, we want to be more precise, though. We want to be more correct. So people should bring their raincoats. Everyone should bring his or her raincoat. Next item is apostrophes. Okay? And with apostrophes, you want to show your ownership, or apostrophes do this. They show ownership or possession. That is my sister's jacket. My aunt's house is in Seattle. You see the apostrophe S for both of those. That's one way. The other way is when we use contractions. Apostrophes can also be used to form them. He's not coming to the party. Well, that's not showing possession. It's just stating that he is. It's an abbreviation, a contraction for he is. That isn't your responsibility, or that is not your responsibility. So that's another way for apostrophes to be used. However, as it was at the bottom of this page before we began, in most formal writing, you want to avoid contractions. Now, that's not that's not something that you want to do always. There may be times when you want to show off your voice or show off voice within your essay, and using contractions becomes necessary for that. However, in the majority of formal essays or formal writing that you do, I would say leave out contractions if at all possible. Knowing when to use it apostrophe s or its for its sometimes gets us into trouble. We need to figure out how to use that properly. We need to always remember that it apostrophe s always means it is, while its reflects ownership or possession. It's just like saying something's his, something's hers, that's yours. Those don't have apostrophes with them, and neither does its when we're showing ownership or possession. Some examples here. It's time to leave for the movie now. The apostrophe s means it's saying it is time to leave for the movie now. Conversely, the cat never drinks its milk. If we put an apostrophe there, if it's it apostrophe s, what we would be saying was the cat never drinks it is milk, and that's incorrect. So we need to say the cat never drinks its milk because its refers to the cat. Similarly, your car does not have its tag. ITS refers to the fact that it's the car's tag. It's its tag, not it is tag. So I hope this helps you understand the difference between it apostrophe s or its. And it apostrophe s is that contraction for it is. And remember, if we're not using that in writing, if we're avoiding contractions in our formal writing, we won't run into that problem anyway. So all of our examples of its should always be its, reflecting ownership or possession. Now, some things to remember from this presentation and the one before it. Major editing errors can be corrected through proper proofreading and from learning the necessary rules of grammar and the necessary rules of punctuation. Run-ons and comma splices can be corrected in a variety of ways, not just with the use of periods, though that is one way. You may want to just diversify and vary your sentence structure by adding those other elements we talked about. Knowing the correct forms of be, have, and do will help you avoid agreement errors. Pronouns must always match their antecedents in gender and number. And apostrophes are used to show ownership or to create contractions. Now, I hope this presentation has helped you to learn the mistakes that you want to avoid, because you don't want to make these major editing errors in your essays or in your writing in life in general.